Hi, second graders, and welcome to another day of listening and learning with Miss Catrone from Citizenship Academy. So, yesterday we started a new domain all about the amazing human body. Now, one of the characters or important people that we learned about yesterday was a man named Antoine Van Leeuwenhoek. And if you remember yesterday, he was Nicky Nutry's one of his heroes. So we're going to find out a little bit today why he was one of his heroes. Some things we learned yesterday is that he lived in Holland almost 400 years ago. And that the name he was given is something in Dutch, and it means Anton who lives at the corner of Lionsgate. So we're going to find out more about that hero today. Excuse me. I'm going to give you a hint about why Anton Van Leeuwenhoek is one of Nicky Nutry's heroes. 400 years ago, he made an important discovery that helps present-day scientists like Nicky Nutry. I want you to listen carefully today as I read to find out what Anton discovered. So without further ado, let's learn about this amazing hero in history. I'm going to share my screen with you so you guys can see the pictures. Let's get started. Hi, boys and girls. Last time we were together, I said that I would tell you about Anton Van Leeuwenhoek. I do plan to do that, but first I want to tell you a story about me. Remember, our narrator is Nicky Nutry, so he is the nutritionist that's showing us the picture. When I was about your age, one day my father came home with a present for me under his arm. When I first opened it, I wasn't sure what it was. Ooh, maybe he'll give us a hint. Do you guys have any idea what this is? You can tell someone next to you, you can shout it at the computer, you can write it in the comments. Do you know what this science tool is? Nick's gonna tell us. It looked like this. Do you know what this is called or what it does? My father explained that it was a microscope. That was nothing I had ever dreamed of wanting. I spent most of my time playing outside and could barely sit still to read a book. Why would I want this funny looking instrument? Do you guys know what a microscope does? We learned in our insect unit that word microscopic, which meant very, very tiny, that you could only see under a microscope. So that tool helps make things look a lot bigger. You are so curious about everything. I thought perhaps you'd like to see what a butterfly wing looks like up close, my father said. They must look at a butterfly wing under that microscope. Let's see if I can make this a little smaller so you can see the whole thing. Maybe it's not going to work with me today. I peered through the lens, or a curved piece of magnifying glass, of the microscope and saw the tiny veins and hairs of a butterfly wing. I looked at insect eyes and blades of grass. I looked at oak leaves and dead bumblebees and toy soldiers. It was the best present I had ever received. I really love how Nick Nutry shows love of learning, because at first he thought he wouldn't like that toy or that present that he was given, but after he was able to see so many cool things up close, he loved learning about them. What does a magnifying glass do? Have you ever used a magnifying glass? Who can tell me what a magnifying glass is used for? You can tell someone next to you, you can write it down, you can write it in the comments. What is a magnifying glass used for? Yeah, it magnifies objects. It makes objects look hundreds of times bigger than they really are. It shows things that are too small to see with the human eye alone. Sometimes people use magnifying glasses to read really small print, or to find splinters buried deep in the skin. Well, a microscope is a lot like that, but a whole lot better. So what does that have to do with Antoine Van Leeuwenhoek? Well, just like me at 7 years old, the year I received my first microscope, Anton was very curious. He also had a fascination with magnifying objects. I like that they show that curiosity, or that character strength, curiosity. Although Anton was not a scientist, His work with microscopes changed the way people thought about the human body and how it works. I wonder how his curiosity and interest in microscopes helps us learn about the human body. Let's find out. At 16, Anton began working in the textile or cloth business. His shop sold cloth, buttons, sewing supplies, ribbons, and lace. His customers were very particular, expecting the very best textiles, or we just learned that that is a synonym for the word cloth, for their suits and dresses. Anton used a magnifying glass to make sure the threads of cloth sorry guys, I lost my place. To make sure the threads of cloth were straight and tightly woven. His customers appreciated Anton's careful observations. Observations are made when you look closely at the details of something. When he was about 30 years old, Anton took a trip from his home in Holland to nearby England. There he discovered a book called Micrographia, meaning small images. Do you have any ideas about what these images or pictures were about? All right, here we have lice. Written by Robert Hooke, the book was full of drawings and descriptions of objects seen through a microscope. Anton was fascinated by how large and detailed the micro or small objects looked when seen through the lens of a microscope. A microscope are the curved pieces of glass that magnified or made bigger what he could see. It was a little like someone with poor eyesight putting on eyeglass lenses for the first time and discovering that the blurry tree in the distance was actually made up of individual leaves. He couldn't wait to get home to experiment with his own objects. So he liked looking at this book of things magnified under the magnifying glass or microscope. Upon his return to Holland, Anton began to build his own single lens microscopes. It was a type of microscope only having one lens to look through. He shaped his lenses very carefully, grinding them down with sand and polishing them smooth with putty, or a polishing powder. Anton's simple microscopes magnified things from 50 to 200 times their natural size. Anton had been interested in science and nature ever since he was a boy, and now he had the opportunity to study nature at a much closer range. He carried squiggly worm-like insect larvae around in his pocket, eager to watch their entire life cycles of insects with the aid or help of a microscope. Remember, the insect larva we learned about in our insects unit, and it's one of the stages of their life cycle. Remember, they hatch from the egg and out comes the larva, sometimes called a pupa. All right, here we have mosquitoes under a microscope. Using the microscope he studied people's skin, mosquito wings, and sheep hairs. He observed duck hearts, fish scales, cow eyes, and water bugs. What a strange man, others thought. But this patient man was driven by his curiosity. Ooh, I spotted two character strengths there. They talked about how he was patient, which means he showed patience, and he had curiosity. Both of those are awesome character strengths. And he wanted to learn more. There's another one, love of learning. He never lost interest in the scales on a gnat's wings or the hairs on a fly. He looked at the same things again and again, comparing, measuring, and recording his findings. I like how he's so interested in so many things. Here we have pond water under a microscope. Anton conducted many experiments with water, drinking water from his well, water from lakes, and from the sea, rain, and melted snow. He discovered what looked to him like tiny animals in lake water. He called these little animals animalcules. Anton claimed he saw even more animalcules swimming about in rainwater. They were everywhere. He said he estimated or guessed that 1,000 of these tiny creatures could fit on the head of a pin. People called him a liar and a magician, thinking him quite mad or crazy. But in fact, Antoine was not mad at all. His little animals were really not animals, but they were definitely alive. He was the first to observe and describe many tiny living things in nature, not visible with the naked eye, including bacteria or germs. When something cannot be seen with the naked eye, it means that you cannot see the object with just your eyes. You need a tool such as a microscope or a telescope or a magnifying glass in order to see it. Sorry guys, I lost my place again. Many scientists believe that these tiny life forms have been on Earth for more than 3 billion years. They surround us in air, water, and on land. But no one was aware of their existence before Anton recorded what he saw. He discovered a whole new world. All of those little bacteria and things that he could see with his microscope that other people couldn't see. Ever curious, Anton began studying the saliva from inside his mouth. He discovered even more bacteria. He found that the sticky coating on the outside of his teeth was crawling with millions of tiny organisms or living things. You have them too, but don't worry, they won't hurt you. We'll learn more about that another day. All right, here we have engraving of Anton from the Royal Society. Let's find out what that means. Anton kept a journal or a writing book to record his detailed observations. He made friends with 2 English doctors who belonged to England's Royal Society of London. They told him that their fellow English scientists kept similar journals to share their scientific discoveries, and they invited Anton to share his work with them. And so on for the next 50 years, Anton sent hundreds of letters to England. His letters described in great detail the tiny structures that he saw through his homemade microscopes. He described fungus on stale bread, the stingers, eyes, and mouths of bees, even tiny lice. Because he could not draw well, Anton hired someone to illustrate his writing. The English Society loved everything he sent and published his letters for other people to read. He is teaching other people about all the things that he is discovering and seeing under his microscope. I also like that he uses teamwork because he knows that he has a hard time drawing, so he hires a team to help him with that. This is a microscope today and Antoine's microscope. Anton Van Leeuwenhoek did not invent the microscope, nor was he the first to use one, but he used his own simple microscope more than most people of his day. Compared to modern microscopes, Anton's was very simple indeed. It was even more simple than other microscopes used in his day. The entire instrument was only 3 or 4 inches long and had to be held up close to the eye. Anton's microscope used only one lens. Modern microscopes have 2 or more lenses, one in the eyepiece that you look through, and at least one lens at the bottom of the tube or barrel to enlarge things even more. Today's objects are put on glass slides to be viewed. These objects remain in one place. It is the lens that moves, not the objects. Instead of keeping the objects in one place, Anton mounted his objects on the end of a sharp pointed pin sticking up in front of the lens and moved the objects instead of the lens. Anton's invention required good lighting and great patience to use. His lenses were the clearest and most powerful lenses of his day, but he never shared his secret for creating them. No one came close to matching the quality of Anton Van Leeuwenhoek's microscope for more than 100 years after his death. Of the 400 to 500 microscopes that Anton is believed to have made, no more than 9 exist today. Alrighty, let's look at this pond water under the microscope. Anton is one of my heroes because he was the first person to describe bacteria, tiny living things not visible with the naked eye. After his discovery of bacteria, it made it possible to see other small living things, such as building blocks of all life on Earth. As a nutritionist, I am fascinated by how the human body works and the tiny building blocks that make up the human body. Next time we meet, I look forward to teaching you about the amazing body's amazing building blocks. Alrighty, guys, that is the end of our story today. I loved learning about that hero and how he used his love of learning and his curiosity and his patience to discover so many things about our world through his microscope. I'm going to skip the comprehension questions for today, and I'll put those in a quiz that follows at the end. But for now, let's quickly learn our vocab word, and then you're on to do your quiz. All right, today's word is observations. My turn, observations, your turn. Good job, observations. In the read aloud you heard, his customers appreciated Anton's careful observations. Observations include the information that is gathered when watching someone or something very closely. When drawing a petal flower, Rusty made detailed observations of the petals, so he looked very closely. Look around the room and make observations about what you see. I'll have you write a sentence about something that you observe or an observation that you make. All right, what word were we learning about? Observations, very good. All right, make sure that you complete the quiz at the end of this story so I can see how well you understood. If I ask a question and you're not sure what the answer is, don't forget you can rewind the video and you can go back and listen to the story all over again, or the part that you're confused about. I can't wait to see your answers. Today I want to shout out Jordan Battle and Silas because they had their quizzes in super early this morning. They're on it, and I'm so impressed with your work. I can't wait to see what everybody does today. Have a great day, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.